experiment gone wrong. In the late 1950s, a scientist was attempting to crossbreed European honeybees with highly productive but very aggressive African bees. The mutant bees escaped and steadily moved towards North America. Giant killer bee swarms are thought to be responsible for the deaths of over 1,000 people.
They were completely just about 1.5 inches thick around my head. And it felt like I was on fire.
Jeff Moser was helping a friend clean up his backyard when he heard something loud approaching him.
All I saw was a cloud of dust. And it's come to realize as soon as I saw the cloud of dust, it turned out that it was just a huge swarm of bees. Got maybe about 120 feet or so. And I stumbled, got back up again, and I guess I was waving my arms everywhere, trying to keep them away from my face. I ended up ripping my shirt off, or pulled my shirt off my back. And I was going to use that to cover my mouth and my nose and keep running. But when I pulled it inside out, it was completely full of bees. And at that point, I just couldn't run anymore. I just had no more muscle. So I ended up getting on my knees and my elbows, like, crouched down. And I took my hands and just covered my mouth and covered my nose. I was spitting bees out of my mouth and blowing them out of my nose while this was going on. I was just burning up. And my thoughts were my family. I just wanted to stay alive. I was praying,
Moser was stung over 4,000 times, and the levels of venom in his system were so high that his organs began to shut down.
And I think at that point is when I started losing consciousness.
When Moser's condition deteriorated, he was airlifted from Las Vegas to Phoenix, where specialists could treat him.
I woke up in the emergency room with 6 doctors pulling stingers out of me. It was just frightening. The main thing that kept going through my head was my family. And that was the hardest. I didn't want to die. And as you could tell, it still bugs me. I just didn't want to go out that way.
In addition to their attacks on humans, these giant swarms of killer bees have almost completely wiped out the honeybee in the southwest United States. Experts estimate that there are 5 million killer bee hives in Arizona alone, each giant hive containing up to 80,000 bees. And now it appears these killer bees may be headed even further north and adapting to colder temperatures. But some scientists, like Dr. Marla Spivak, believe giant killer bees aren't a serious problem and feel the threat is exaggerated.
The African bees are not really a problem in the southern United States. They've disrupted beekeeping a little bit, so some beekeepers that were used to keeping very gentle colonies of bees have had to either stop beekeeping or adapt to keeping a more defensive kind of honeybee. People are really afraid of stinging insects like bees and wasps, and so the thought of having a swarm of bees get on you and start attacking and stinging is really threatening and scary to many people.
However, there seems to be evidence to contradict Spivak. The swarms have been spotted as far north as Missouri and have killed humans in both Texas and Arizona. Now Munster Quest will investigate this terrifying new threat. The expedition team will travel to Nevada to see if the bees have spread there. They'll also attempt to gather specimens in the mountains of northern Arizona to determine if the bees are able to survive in cold climates. The science team will then analyze the bees to see if they are from the mutant strain, and they will also conduct an experiment to determine just how aggressive these creatures have become. The search begins in Bisbee, southern Arizona. Reed Booth, a bee expert, will lead the expedition. he heads to a location where suspected giant killer beehives have been spotted.
Bees will live in anything. Out in the natural world, they live in hollow trees and caves, the eaves of our house, Spanish tile roofs, under trailers, in cars, in trunks. I have seen killer bees kill people, literally, kill horses. They will attack anything that moves, anything that makes noise, smells, and they won't do it a little bit. They will attack until something is dead or gone.
The team arrives at a deserted ranch. The goal is to determine if the bees are the hybrid strain and whether they're getting more aggressive.
All right. Very quietly, we'll see what's going on. See if we can see any activity, flight path, bees coming and going. I don't see any snakes yet. Okay, we got one.
Right there.
We got one. Oh, that's huge. Look at all the guard bees.
They quickly locate 2 large hives.
Boy, that's going to be a big one. There are 2 huge hives in there. This house has been abandoned for probably 50 years at least. There's old drywall construction from years and years ago, and there's many holes in the walls. The one hive has a massive amount of guard bees, which normally indicates an extremely large and mean hive. The larger the hive, the meaner they are as a rule. More aggressive these killer hives are.
The team wears thick nylon anti-sting suits, but they're not 100% effective.
I think we're good. This elastic is good.
Okay.
Right. Then we'll go to battle. Okay, let's go see what these guys have. We're gonna have to remove this counter. We have a lot of guard bees here. These bees are so bad, they killed a barn owl. You can see them stinging the dead corpse. They don't care what they sting. They will kill anything. And they killed this poor barn owl. Here's another entrance. Now here's the second entrance in this abandoned building. And this, again, could be very full of bees. Okay, they're not over here, but where you see the vibration. You see the vibration? They hate vibration. Look at them coming out, getting ready to take flight and attack. Here they come. Okay, this is going to be a serious hive. Now, I have not disrupted their front door. I'm just making vibration. You can see them pouring out of there in seconds. That was 3 seconds. Look at the aggression with these bees. Attacking, unbelievable. Stingers being pulled out. Ouch.
When the giant swarms of killer bees attack their victims, they release a chemical pheromone, an airborne signal that tells the rest of the hive to join in a mass attack.
All right, here they come. We already have part of the hive out, but we can get a lot more of the hive out. Look at them. The alarms have been sent out, and here they come. Let's just stand here for a minute and see how aggressive these bees are. How many come out? Well, I'd say we already have at least 10, maybe 15,000 bees out. They are pouring out of there like water. Ouch. Whoa, whoa. Oh, you guys are just something else, aren't you? They're still coming, pouring out. We will have 80 to 90% of this hive out by the time that we start walking into the desert. This super aggressive behavior like this 5, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, not evident at all. Not evident. And they are just attacking me. Something horrible. Look at them all stinging my glove. You can see them pulling themselves off, dying in the process. And they're still pouring off. We must have 60% of the hive out now attacking. Ow! Ow!
Oh, yeah, I know.
Let's go. Let's go. Back out. I'll give it another tap for good measure, and we will go outside and just see how far they will chase me.
Killer bees have a unique and chilling characteristic. They will relentlessly pursue fleeing victims, in essence, a killer instinct. Most scientists believe they will chase their prey for up to a quarter of a mile from the site of an attack. The team will test that theory.
Ouch. They are still bouncing off me like hail. They are following the pheromone trail as if we were right at the hive. This is incredible. This is incredible. These are true monsters. You want monsters? Look no further. This is the real deal. Be a quarter of a mile shortly, maybe a little more. And they're attacking just like it was no tomorrow, just like we were just standing there, right at the hive. Super aggressive behavior. And 5 to 10 years ago, they would have been tapering off by now. But they are not. You can see how far we are from the house, and it's just not stopping. I've been stung. I've easily been stung 40 times through the suit on this job.
The hive of angry killer bees pursues the team well beyond a half mile, stinging them hundreds of times.
Okay, well, it's been about 10, 15 minutes since we walked away from that hive, and you could just keep walking through the desert and they would just stick with you for, we really don't know how far at this point. The old theory was a quarter of a mile in the past. Obviously, that's out the window right now.
Monster Quest is on the trail of giant swarms of killer bees that are invading the United States. The oldest known bee specimen was found perfectly preserved in amber in a Burmese mine. Radiocarbon dating showed it was over 100 million years old. The bees' once primitive defense mechanisms evolved over time as humans became interested in farming their honey.
In the early days, it was strictly honey hunting. It was watching worker bees returning to their colonies, locating the colonies, and then robbing the nest. And so some enterprising person in some little tribe got an idea and said, yeah, we'll catch a swarm and we'll see what happens. People have been keeping bees for at least 5,000 years.
To the ancients, swarms of bees were seen as an omen of death. They were said to have foretold the defeat of Pompeii by Caesar in the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC. 2,000 years later, the omen has become a very real danger.
When did we go from good bees to bad bees?
It started in the jungles of southern Brazil, 300 miles to the west of Rio de Janeiro. In the early 1950s, a scientist developed a mutant strain of honeybee, an experiment that would have disastrous consequences.
He was a geneticist. His name is Warwick Kerr, and he heard that the South Africans were producing record amounts of honey. He also knew that certain African bees were very rugged and can live in a very diverse environmental circumstance. He had met with his government, and they gave him the okay to import certain African species or subspecies to Brazil. But he wanted to keep them under quarantine to avoid escaping.
Then, in 1957, a deadly mistake.
An assistant working in the field removed what we call queen excluders. They're a special little bridge that allows the workers to get through, but not the queens. That way you don't have escapees. He removed all the queen excluders from their experimental hives.
26 killer bee queens escaped from their hives, with their worker bees following close behind. The swarms spread like wildfire through the jungles and mountains of South America, leaving a trail of death and destruction.
They were making about 200 miles a year, moving northward.
The mutant killer bees soon reached Mexico, and reports of human deaths increased in number. Americans were quickly alerted to the impending invasion of these swarms and the danger they presented.
When they are spooked and upset, then they go into hypervigilant defense. And I'm putting it mildly, because it can turn from a God-given gift, okay, going back to symbolism, to something that you just can't believe.
Black mass, sir. A moving black mass.
Mile by mile, city by city.
The escape of the giant killer bee swarms led to frightening depictions of the havoc they could bring to America. In 1990, the deadly swarms finally crossed the Mexico-U.S. border. The first American victim was killed on a ranch outside Grande City, Texas. Numerous attacks followed across the southwestern United States.
Alvin 911, do you have an emergency?
Ma'am, we have a lady in Alvin that has honeybees stinging her. Go ahead, ma'am.
Please hurry, they've been biting me for a long time.
This call from a home in Alvin, Texas was made following a surprise attack by a giant swarm.
Are you allergic to bee bites?
I don't know, I've never been stung this many times.
Okay.
The attack was thwarted by a police officer who managed to smoke out the swarm and save the woman's life. Scientists believe these killer bees are becoming increasingly aggressive and highly organized.
They just keep going until their threat is down and dead. And on autopsies, these bees with their plan of attack, they will crawl in your nostrils, they will crawl in your ear canals, and on autopsy they've been discovered numerously in your esophagus. So they crawl down your throat and sting you in the esophagus. And you know that with an allergic reaction placed directly in those areas will kill you.
Gloria de Grande Hoffman, a bee researcher, has tracked the spread of the giant killer bee swarms.
This map shows the spread of African bees in the southern United States after its initial introduction in the southernmost part of Texas. What they did is those bees began to move northward and primarily westward initially until they covered the southern tier of Texas and moved on into New Mexico and Arizona.
For decades, scientists believed the killer bee strain, which evolved in the tropics, wouldn't be able to survive in colder climates. Dr. Hoffman, however, says they have crossbred with native bees, enabling them to adapt to the weather.
The African bees are a hybrid between a European and an African, and those genes seem to have established themselves in those populations that can make it through the winter. They've retained African traits, and they've also co-opted some European traits, so they're a true hybrid.
The science team will now conduct an experiment to test whether these mutant killer bees have indeed adapted to cooler temperatures.
So what we've done is take a colony of African bees and put them into this cold chamber to watch their clustering behavior. It's cold inside there, much colder than out here.
They place a hive of several thousand killer bees into a chamber where the temperature is just 23 degrees Fahrenheit. They will monitor the bees over an 8-hour period to see if they can adapt to survive.
We're going to see how well these bees can thermoregulate their nests when they're in this kind of cold climate.
The Monster Quest expedition team has traveled 400 miles north to Las Vegas, Nevada, a place known for temperature extremes. During the day, the thermometer regularly climbs above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But at night, it can drop below 32 degrees. If the bees can survive here, they can survive anywhere.
Okay, I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada, looking for anywhere where killer beehives might be, which, from what I can see, is everywhere.
An infestation in an urban environment could be extremely dangerous.
If killer beehives started moving into the Strip in numbers, it could be real bad for the patrons, the people just walking along on the street. Get into some serious trouble, especially if there were a few hives that were closer together. And when one hive gets riled up, they all get riled up, of course, and it could be a real catastrophe here. All of these buildings and high-rises and casinos and hotels have so many places where bees could sneak in, build a hive without anyone knowing until somebody got into trouble. So that's what we're going to be looking for.
The team begins its search at night, when giant swarms are usually inactive. The goal is to capture some of the creatures for testing.
Okay, we're looking for any place that a killer beehive could be located. And they could live in a vent such as that there. They like to live where it's warm if possible, of course. This is a big electrical generator for something, but you can guarantee it's warm. And they could easily live underneath this platform right here. They also love to live actually in the bases of telephone poles. I remove them all the time. The bases will get rotted out and hollow, and the bees will go in and live in the base of the telephone pole. Any of these vents, as long as they don't get washed out, of course. But usually, a lot of times where there's vents like this, there will be a crack around the drain or the vent, and they can go into the hollow block. This building looks pretty good at this point, but we'll continue our search. These are extremely dangerous situations when you have a killer beehive in such an urban area and such a setting like this with so many people around. It's so dangerous, and people do get attacked quite a bit. They come out of their house and all of a sudden see the bees flying around and they get stung. The harder we look, the more likely we are to find, of course. But we will find killer beehives in Vegas. They are here. There's no doubt about it.
Monster Quest is on the Strip in Las Vegas, searching for swarms of killer bees. These deadly creatures may be moving north, infesting urban areas and adapting to colder environments. It is in densely populated areas that the swarms have the greatest potential for terror.
You became a target. No matter what you were doing, walking through, just stepping out of your car, it was intense.
Bisbee, Arizona is just east of Tucson. In 1998, police were called to investigate a bizarre disturbance in the midst of the town's shopping district.
As we were arriving on scene, it was the situation was kind of unusual. There was abandoned vehicles on the gulch, doors were open, and people were running down the street.
The cause quickly became apparent.
Once we got closer, I could see that there was bees in the air.
But rescuing victims was next to impossible.
I got out of the truck, went around the back to put my gear on because I could see the cloud of bees ahead. And as soon as I got to the back, I was suddenly just carpeted. I had my entire head, shoulders, they were in my shirt, crawling down my arms. I'm not even sure how many times I'd been stung, but numerous times.
You could see the swarm initially, then you could hear it, and then you could feel it. And it would seem like every time the swarm would go from one area to the other, groups would peel off and make these attacks. There was a female that was obviously in distress. I got out of my vehicle to try to get her into my car. At that time, I couldn't imagine how many times that she had been stung because she had been out there for so long.
The giant swarm seemed to have its own agenda.
I did feel that the bees were working together as one. They definitely would move as a unit, as a cloud.
It would gather together in this dark ball and then just attack whatever it was.
I'd run into the Africanized bees down through Central America when I was in the service, but I'd never seen bees this aggressive. Down in the jungles there is usually if you can head through some thick brush, get 50 yards away, they'd leave you alone. Here I was almost 200 yards away from their hive and I was still being attacked.
7 of the victims ended up in the hospital. It took 8 hours for firefighters to restore the area to safety.
I don't think I've ever, even prior to that incident, been involved in anything as intense.
I've gotten a call from a contact here in Las Vegas that has located a potentially very dangerous hive in a residential area. We don't know if it's a killer bee hive or not, but we're going to go find out.
The expedition team meets local exterminator Shane Yeager. He says there is an aggressive beehive close by, and he suspects it might be inhabited by killer bees.
And you say they've been there over 3 years?
Yeah.
Being there that long, as you know, Shane, the older the hive and the larger the hive, the worse they are. So yeah. I'm really glad I'm looking over the fence here, and it looks like we don't have any neighbors right backed up against us, thank goodness. So we're not hopefully going to kill anyone.
Scientists say the killer bees are learning new survival strategies while developing a new tolerance for extreme temperatures.
The myths are abound, of course, that they can't live where it's cold, et cetera, et cetera. How cold does it get here Fahrenheit in the winter?
We get dipped down to freezing. We have probably a week of 30 degrees. Mm-hmm. And I know last winter we had a record amount of snow.
The team suits up and approaches the hive.
So we're going to go and let's grab the loppers.
Okay.
And we'll go make some room for us to work and stir it up a little bit. See how active these guys are.
Let's do it. So let's grab some of the heavy machinery, sledgehammer.
All right, very good.
And then we'll have a whack. Knock a few of these off right with the concrete joint.
Very good. Okay, I'll move my stuff back. Well, you can hear it. They're in attack mode.
Yeah.
You can
oh,
hear
yeah.
it.
They're getting aggressive. Yeah. I don't see any activity again at the top.
Nowhere else on the fountain. God darn it, the hole is just strange enough so I've got, a few in there, but I think what we're going to have to do is open her up.
The bees strike almost immediately.
I can open up a second block, too.
Oh, here you go.
Oh, my.
You got home?
Let me hit one more shot.
Come here. Oh, yeah. Let's get a little bit here. Yeah, let's get a little bit here.
They attempt to gather samples for analysis at the lab, but the attack is making it extremely difficult.
That's 100 or so. These are definitely acting so aggressive. There's no doubt about it. They're a living monster. And like we've talked before, a beehive, they don't act as individuals. These are all acting as one unit. All right? They're all thinking the exact same way, and that is to drive us off and kill us. I would stake my life on it that these are not European bees.
Yeah.
Entomologist Dr. Marla Spivak does not believe an invasion of giant killer bee swarms is imminent.
They've only moved into climates to which they're adapted. They're really sensitive to their environment, and if there's not enough water, or if there's too much rainfall, or if there's not enough flowers, floral resources, they're not going to move out of those areas. They're going to stay where the conditions are good for them.
Spivak considers most of the United States an unsuitable killer bee habitat.
As you go farther north in the United States, past Texas, past New Mexico and Arizona, the winters get colder and colder and colder, and Africanized bees are really not adapted to temperate, colder climates. They're an African bee. They like warm, tropical climates, and Minnesota, for example, would not be on their list of places to visit. It's too cold here in the winter. They like warm, tropical places.
To test the theory, the science team is analyzing how the hive behavior of killer bees changes when the temperature drops below freezing. The bees have been exposed to 23-degree temperatures for 3 hours, but the thermal camera reveals an area of red where the bees are thriving.
So what we're seeing here, and also what the thermal camera is showing us, is that they are starting to gather toward the center of the frame, which is the warmest part of the hive. You can see they're moving up from the bottom of the frame towards the center and gathering in a cluster. And this is the hottest part of the colony right now. So they're trying to keep each other warm, and they're also trying to keep the queen warm. And they'll continue to do this as they get colder and colder.
The giant swarms of bees seem to be learning strategies to survive in the cold by crossbreeding and adapting to the environment.
So this behavior indicates that the Africanized bees would also thermoregulate their nest in a similar way to European bees, that they could survive in colder climates as well.
Monster Quest is searching America, investigating giant swarms of killer bees that may be growing more aggressive and attacking humans.
They were in my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my arms, my hands. They were just all over me.
Tom Housley, a former soldier, has dealt with dangerous situations before, but nothing has prepared him for this attack.
I was in the Special Forces in the service when I was young, and that wasn't scary. I've taken guns away from people and knives, and that wasn't really scary, but this was scary.
Housley was mowing the lawn in his backyard when he accidentally ran over a massive hive containing some 100,000 killer bees.
I was being hit by these bees, and pretty soon there was hundreds or thousands of them. I just jumped off the mower and I started running. I was yelling, "God, I'm dead, call the paramedics," you know. I was scared, just scared. I panicked really bad because I thought if I'd ever got stung, I thought I was a dead man.
His neighbor, hearing the noise, came to investigate.
The way he was hollering, I knew something was wrong. As I got closer, I realized there was bees.
I was looking for a place to hide, and then there was no place to go. And then Tommy showed up, and it was like heaven had opened the doors, you know.
He was definitely in fear of his life, and he was panicked, no doubt.
With Housley clinging to life, his neighbor went back outside to warn. The expedition team is headed to northern Arizona. It's an area that has experienced some of the most recent and violent giant swarm attacks. The team is trying to determine if the bees are surviving in the colder mountainous regions of the state.
A standard assumption, especially in the scientific community, is that killer bees can't live at these higher elevations and at these lower temperatures. I tend to believe that they can. A couple of reasons. They have a higher metabolism. Their wings actually beat faster, and they also store up to twice as much honey in a larger hive. So they can keep the hive warmer in colder conditions.
Lay down and die till you're no longer a danger to them.
The science team has received the first samples gathered in Las Vegas. They will analyze the specimens to see if the deadly killer bees are surviving in these cooler temperatures.
The first stage in morphometrics is called FABIS, and that's a series of tests where we just measure the right forewing of each bee. We take 10 wings and mount them on slides. And this gives us an analysis to determine whether we can rule out if they're European or...
Honey is pure energy. And if they can collect enough honey, they can survive.
Well, okay, here we are then.
Warn others in the area. Within seconds, the killer bees had found a new target.
I guess you'd call an attack force, like planes attacking a ship. It was spread out and moving in. They stung me all over, in my neck, in my face.
After the paramedics got here, I was trembling so bad, and they said I was hyperventilating.
Both men were lucky to survive.
I can't compare it to anything else I've dealt with in my life. You either get away from them, or you...
The team will attempt to collect samples that can be sent to the laboratory for analysis.
What is the general elevation of the area here in this area? What is a minimum and a maximum?
Right here, we're pretty close to 7,000 feet.
Okay.
We're just north of downtown Flagstaff.
What kind of temperatures do you see in the winter?
The lowest temperature is maybe minus 27.
African.
The images of the wings are projected for comparison.
I'm guessing that these bees are African just because the measurements are very small. This one is at an 8.8. This one here is, again, at 8.8. Usually with European bees, we tend to see numbers more around 9.1, 9.2. So my guess is that they're going to be African, but the Fabus test, again, is just a preliminary test.
Yeah, so we'll just maybe go look at this colony that's in the oak tree.
Okay, very good. Let's do that. We can get some samples and maybe see how aggressive they are.
The team begins with a scout of the outskirts of town, where they believe giant swarms are likely to colonize. They've received a tip of a sighting in this residential area.
Well, this is a honey customer of mine that called and said he just has bees in his backyard. Seems like they're going in the pallet space near the ground.
They're down under the pallet. Looks like a pretty good sized hive. Of course, we have no idea if they're killer bees or not yet.
In order to get a closer look, the team suits up. They'll also prepare a smoker, which they hope will have a calming effect on the swarm.
Well, it's there if we need it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and...
If these bees are of the mutant variety, it will be proof that the swarms are capable of surviving at high altitude, and therefore in colder climates.
They're getting a little feisty.
Monster Quest is searching America for giant swarms of killer bees that are moving northwards on a murderous rampage. This man was the victim of a brutal giant swarm attack in Las Vegas. This expert believes the giant killer bees are adapting and learning to live in more extreme environments. This homeowner was stung more than 500 times by an angry swarm.
I'm pretty convinced that we're actually going to find wild killer beehives at 7,000 or 8,000 feet.
The expedition team has located a hive in northern Arizona, and the bees are displaying very aggressive behavior.
I mean, we are messing with them, and the more we mess with them, of course, the more aggressive they're going to be. But if we can get a piece up where we can get a bunch more in here, then the scientists can tell us.
The Carl Hayden Bee Research Center is located in southern Arizona. Mona Chambers is analyzing the high-altitude samples.
So these bees are from Flagstaff. It looks like we're going to have to run a full morphometrics analysis because the numbers are on the small side. The wing lengths are 9.0, which is on the edge.
Killer bees generally have a wing length under 9.1 millimeters.
So because this looks like it might be Africanized, we'll go ahead and run a full morphometrics analysis. And that'll be a much more in-depth procedure, and it'll give us a definitive answer for honeybee type.
A positive result will be proof that giant killer bee swarms are adapting to cold climate regions.
Once we get all of the parts dissected, we analyze them using a computer program that measures all of the different body parts that we've dissected out.
Finally, the tests are complete, and the results are definitive.
Okay, so we have the results from the morphometrics test. The bees that were sent from Las Vegas are Africanized, and that's with a probability of 100%. And the bees from Flagstaff were also Africanized, again with 100% probability.